Good day, folks. My name is Sania Rahman. Once again, we are here for another session with Sania Rahman. Sania Rahman has works with the government, with the federal government, and without having me to introduce her, I'll give her the opportunity to tell us a little bit about herself. So, Sania, can you get started by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Thank you first of all, Sadbhai, for having me over here. So my name is Sania Rahman. I moved to Canada from in 2009 from Karachi, Pakistan. I currently work for the federal government of Canada in the department called Employment and Social Development Canada. My background, a little bit about my background, I would just like to say that I did my bachelor's and master's of business administration from Karachi, Pakistan. Then I worked for a pharmaceutical company called GlaxoSmithKline in the marketing department. I worked there for almost about 3 years, three and a half years. And then my husband, who had moved about a year before I moved to Canada, he sponsored me. And then I moved to Canada. After moving to Canada, I knew that I had a very limited option because, of course, he already had a job with the federal government, so he was working in Ottawa. So I knew that I would not be moving from here. So the only opportunities that I could see in Ottawa were basically in the IT sector or the federal government. But I was like, I would just try to continue education or get another degree or do something which would actually land me into a position within Ottawa itself. So I decided to get another degree. So I decided to do another master's in business administration. And with that goal, I went to University of Ottawa, which basically told me that after looking at my transcripts, they looked at all the courses and they said that there is no point for you to repeat all the same courses because this is exactly what we're offering. So we would discourage you from taking another, spending a lot of money and doing another degree. So that's basically when I decided that I will just be focusing on what I have, my experience and my education from back home, and will try to find a job with what I have. But long before all of that, when I moved to Canada, it was basically winter time, crazy winter time in October, and I'm not sure, and I'm not familiar if a lot of you are aware of the winters in Ottawa. It's super, super cold over here. But I decided that, I would have to, first of all, get myself acclimatized to the culture, the people, the weather, and I decided to kind of get out of the house. So the first thing I did was I got admission in a course which was being offered by H&R Block. It was a course that was being offered to become a tax associate. So they had a whole 3-month classroom training and then an examination. And after you passed the examination, you were they would give you an interview, ask for an interview, and if you clear, they would give you a position, which would be a temporary position for that particular tax season. So I thought that, I have no experience in taxes, and back in Pakistan it was very different. So I decided that probably this is going to give me a good stepping stone to understand about the culture of Canada, to learn about the tax system. So I enrolled myself 15 days after I moved to Ottawa. So, and then I took that course for 3 months, gave the exam, passed the interview, and I got that position. So I was working as a tax associate from January 2010 till April 2010. Also, in the meantime, I took up a position of a sales associate. I was just wondering that, I need to learn a little bit about the culture of Canada. So for that, of course, I had to get out of the house more often. So I believe that if I don't step out of the house, if I don't integrate, if I don't mingle with the people within Canada, it will be very hard for me to be able to understand the culture and understand what they want to see in a person to get employed in this, in the country. So I worked as a sales associate. I also helped them with the HR part as well. And in the meantime, I was also pregnant with my first child. But then after that, I also got an opportunity to work for a friend's company. So one of my friends, she was working at this small IT company. It was a startup company. Ottawa is very much known for the IT sector. So other than the federal government, it is the IT sector, which is very dominant here in Ottawa. So I decided to work with them. It was a good experience because that experience was solely for the purpose that I want to work in a professional environment, gain some professional Canadian experience, also learn about the culture, the culture that is expected, the professional attitude that is expected from anybody, from any newcomer as well. But one interesting thing is that, of course, this was a voluntary volunteer job. I was aware of the fact that I was not going to be paid, but I actually joined this organization for the only purpose that I want to learn from the people that I work with. Again, the industry was not something that I had worked for before. I had a marketing major, so no idea about IT, but I was helping them with research. One interesting thing that I would really like to share over here is it's an interesting story. So the person who was actually interviewing me for this particular position at the startup company, the CEO, he when he was conducting my interview, he told me very flatly on my face. He said, "You know what? I just want to let you know very clearly that I was a bit hesitant to interview. Although I knew that one of my colleagues has mentioned you and suggested that I should hire you as a volunteer at the organization, but I was very scared of interviewing you just because I didn't know that somebody who's coming from Pakistan would be able to speak in English. I didn't know that how would I be able to interview you? How would I be able to communicate with you?" And I was looking at him and I was like, oh my God. So the perception that, and this is like a white French Canadian, and his other CFO, he had also looked up my university and my school, and they wanted to find out like what kind of education do we get over there, and they were scared. Literally, they were scared of having me for the interview. But when they talked to me, they were like, "Oh my God, you don't have an accent. You were fluent in English. Your education is pretty good. We had never come across, or we had never thought that somebody from that part of the world would be able to communicate with us that properly." So that was one of the things that I thought about. I was like, this is my opportunity to tell them that people from our part of the world are well educated. We have really good experience, and we are very much capable of showing what we can, how we can perform and how well we can do our jobs. So I took that as a great opportunity, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to show it to them so that not only me, but for people who would actually be joining them after I do, any newcomers, it will give them an idea that, we shouldn't be hesitating hiring anybody from that part of the world because they do have the experience and the knowledge and they have the language skills and the communication skills to be able to perform well here. So that was that. Then after that, of course, I've had kids, so I took a little break. In 2013, I was looking up at a website, and now I'm basically going to share the story about how I actually got my job at the federal government. So I was looking up at this website, IRCC website, and on that they had advertised for the Federal Internship for Newcomers program. So this is a program which is run by the federal government. It is run by IRCC itself, so Citizenship and Immigration Canada, and they have partners all over Canada. So I'm not really aware of the partners that they have in Ottawa, in Toronto, or in other cities, but I know for Ottawa, it's the World Skills organization, and they basically provide all the information and help and support in order to apply for this particular program, which is the Federal Internship for Newcomers program. So this program is mainly offered by the government for newcomers who have spent less than 10 years in Canada. So if you have lived for over 10 years, you cannot apply for this program because you're considered as a newcomer only up until 10 years. So you can apply to this program in different categories. So there are categories for engineers, there are categories for IT people, there are categories for administrative assistants, for economists, for mathematicians, because all over the government, in various different departments of the government, you need people of all different types of backgrounds. They basically have this, this whole process which runs from April up until July. So in April, you basically go to this organization like World Skills, get a little bit of information about how to apply for the program. They train you for it. They prepare you for it. In May, the positions open. They open only for 2 days. You have to prepare, your profile on the jobs.gc.ca website. And then as soon as this position opens up for those 2 days, within that limited time frame, you have to apply. And if you have passed those screening questions, you are called for a panel interview. If you pass the panel interview, you're part of a pool, and this pool is created for anybody who is willing to hire newcomers through this program within the federal government. So all the departments have specific spots in this program. My department hires most of the people from the pool because we have a lot of spots because we are the biggest department. But every other department also has like about 1 or 2 spots from the pool, and they call people, they have an informal interview, and they can offer you a position, which would be, of course, a contract position for 90 business days. But it's a great opportunity to have your foot in the door in a federal government or organization, which can actually, I mean, although the program promises that there is no way you will be hired, but I am a true example of that, and I can just share my story with you that I got into this program in 2013. At that time, I had a very little child, so I did not accept any position. And then I applied again in 2015, and I got again into the pool. And that's when I got a call from this department that I currently work for, and they wanted to hire someone for 2 back-to-back contracts. In the federal government, you cannot have more than 90 business days for a contractual position. So they hired me in September. So from September to December was one contract, and they hired me for another contract from January till April. So I had about 6 months, over 6 months of time with them. Again, I would say that it was probably right time, right place. They were short-staffed. They were looking for people. They had seen me work for about 6 months. One thing that I definitely want to mention here that my employers did realize that people who are newcomers or people from our part of the world, we're very dedicated. We are very hardworking. We are willing to put in a lot of effort. Because that's basically how our training is. And it's not specific to any specific individual from that part of the world. I think all of us have been trained that way back home. We have a very rigorous educational system. We have a very rigorous job experience as well from back home. So all of that really transcends into how we perform over here. And you should know that people over here observe that. So they did see a little bit of difference between the way I work and other people worked with me. And without, this program, although it does not provide you with the opportunity to get employed, they did give me a term. Gladly, I was a citizen at that time. As you all know, that federal government only hires people who are citizens. But for this program, you can be employed on a contractual position without even a citizenship. So that could actually be added to your resume, even if it's a contractual position. That will give a lot of value to your resume. So I was hired as a term. So term is basically a contract, but a longer term contract. So I got a 1.5-year term with my department, and then I was continuously applying. So that's also one of the things that I had to keep doing. For federal government positions, you have to keep on applying, you have to keep on trying, because the processes are usually very long. They take a lot of time. A lot of times you don't even hear back from them. But the idea is that you don't get demotivated. You have to keep applying because you have to keep believing in yourself. And that's basically what I kept doing. I kept on applying and applying and applying, although I was already working. But you do not get a permanent position or you do not get a promotion without being part of a specific pool. That's the only little problem with the federal government jobs, just because there's a lot of transparency. There is a lot of, they keep the system very fair. So they want to make sure that this is an opportunity which is available and it is available to everybody. So for that purpose, they have to run those pools. And only if you qualify in the pool, that's only when you get promotion. That's only when you get permanent jobs. So I kept on applying and I got into a pool which was for a promotionary position, and it was also a permanent position. And then my team required somebody in that position and they hired me, and now I'm a permanent employee for the past 2.5 years. So it's been over 5 years since I've been working with the federal government. It's been a great experience. I work in the Office for Disability Issues, where I specifically work as a policy analyst who works on programs and policies related to people with disabilities. I was also contributing to the legislation that has been recently passed, which is the Accessible Canada Act. It was passed last year in July. I contributed to that as well. All the consultations with the stakeholders. I deal with a lot of disability stakeholders. I work very closely with the minister's office. We have a specific minister for employment, workforce development, and disability inclusion. So I work very closely with her office as well, prepare her for a lot of meetings and provide her with a lot of briefing notes. So there's a lot of work that I now do, which I had never done before. Of course, coming from a marketing and business experience and educational knowledge, I was not really hoping that I would be able to find a job in the government, but because I had a lot of experience and I had a lot of education based on economics, and so that basically helped me a lot. I used my education in economics to actually find a position here in the government. So I work as an economic analyst, and it worked out really well for me. So yeah, that's basically what my present looks like now.
Yeah, that's a very good introduction that you've given. I think you've basically covered everything without having me to ask you any questions. So that's good in itself. One thing I do want to ask you, Sania, we talked about it earlier, and with that will be our last concluding question. Would be the fact that you have two kids, I believe.
Yes, I have two
Yeah,
boys.
two boys. So as a working mother, how do you manage all of that? Because a lot of people have the impression that okay, if now we have kids, we cannot work, or how do you manage all of that? That'll be the question.
Yes, no, I definitely understand, and I completely understand the idea behind the fact that it's very hard to work with kids, of course. I totally understand, especially when people who are coming from our part of the world where the culture is a bit dominant, where, if you're a woman, if you're a mother, you need to pay a lot of attention to your kids, and you can put your, experience or your professional experience or whatever on halt. But I personally felt that, I mean, I've also had a time where I had to take a break. And when I moved to Canada, of course, it was just not the newness of the country or the culture that hindered me from getting a job, a professional job right away. But it was also the demands of my family. Of course, I had young babies, and I had no family over here, no friends, or nobody to support me. So it was just my husband and I. But one thing that I will have to say is that women they have to play an extra role for their own selves. They have to stand up for themselves. They have to believe in disciplining their lives. I know it's hard, but initially it would always be hard. For me as well, it was very hard. Even just to drop my kids at the daycare center for a few hours, just to get them used to the idea before joining my organization, just to get them used to the whole idea of daycare. It was hard for me. It was very difficult for me because I wanted to be with them and I wanted to, take care of them completely. But I felt that this was needed. It was very much needed because if I had not done it at that time, I think I would have taken much longer time to get back into workforce. So I would suggest to all these women that you should also think about your future. Do not bring a major gap in your work experience, because if there's a huge gap, it's not impossible, but it's always very hard to come back into workforce. And also don't shy away from seeking help. My husband has been a major source in helping me get where I am right now. He supported me with taking care of the kids, even when I was working as a sales associate. I mean, it was just not something that was very important for me. I could have given up that job, but I just wanted to get out of the house just for those 2 hours and do something. And he was like, you know what? I will take care of the kids. Don't worry. And you just do. And this is just your own free time. So I think men also out there have to play a very important role to support their wives and let them make their career, because now is the time to build it. We can't wait for too long, because then it gets really hard. Dividing your time in such a way that you make your kids a little bit independent as well. So that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to make my kids a little bit independent to take care of their stuff themselves. Of course, I give them a lot of time after work. And after work, and that's the beauty of federal government, it offers you a lot of work-life balance. So I'm very lucky in that way as well. That's why I want to continue working for the federal government. Although when I was back in Pakistan, I could have never thought that I would ever get into federal government, because I was always like I always wanted to get into fast-moving consumer good companies and banks and this and that, and I come with from that kind of background. Always wanted to stick to private sector, but when I moved into federal government, I realized that it offers you so much work-life balance. I work from 8 to 4 every day. After 4 o'clock, when I come back home around like till 5 o'clock, that from 5 o'clock till night, it's my entire time is for my kids. So I don't have to bring any work home. That time is for my kids. I don't feel guilty as well, because they spend about most of their time at school, so they hardly have to spend a lot of time at the daycare. And I just come and pick them up, and yeah. So I mean, just keeping that balance is very
Things is
important.
things are working out good, so that's good. So, and I think you've kind of very nicely covered the personal aspect and the professional aspect of your career, and that's good. Once again, I think this is the first time our interview has gone to 20 minutes with you, but
Is
but your
okay.
story, was so interesting, and I think and I didn't want to stop you, to be honest, just because it is inspirational in itself, and it does give motivation to the ladies out there, especially, and to a lot of the other folks who want to have a very focused and dedicated mindset. So I thank you so much,
Thank
Sanya.
you very
You have
much.
been helping other folks I know in the past as well, and I'm sure that if there are any queries or if somebody wants to reach out, they can surely reach out. So thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time today.
I would just like to mention one quick thing over here is that the federal government itself is encouraging a lot of people, all the women and people who are with the visible minority people, to actually join the workforce. It's not just in the government, but also all over the private sector as well. There are a lot of programs which are being run all over Canada where they're encouraging women and people who are visible minorities to come forward and work and join the workforce. I can share some links and some information of the programs with you on the WhatsApp group, and you can share it with everybody else. Also, a lot of volunteering opportunities, a lot of networking opportunities. So there's a lot of stuff that is going on. It's just that we have to kind of put in some effort and get out there and not shy away from contacting people, from making cold calls. And you're doing a great job at that. So you're putting people together and getting them ahead. So
We'll see.
I did not have that option when I moved to Canada. So I'm so glad that here we have a network of people who are actually supporting people settled here, newcomers. So please feel free to contact me anytime, whenever you have any questions. I would be very happy to help you all.
Thank you so much, Sania, for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.